Hello, it's Gordon here, and hope all is well with you. This video I've called Quite Interesting, Compound Interesting. Because we all know what compound interest is, don't we? It's when a sum of money, there's interest added to it, and then the interest is added to the original sum plus the first lot of interest. So the interest earns interest, and then the sum builds, and the interest, it compounds on itself. Which is great if the interest is in your benefit, not so great if the interest is not in your benefit, i.e. debt of some sort, compound interest. But I'm calling this video Quite Interesting, Compound Interesting, because of something I saw on TV, on the TV show QI, which is quite interesting. That's what it's about. The answer is about not giving the exact correct answer in a quiz format. It's comedians on a panel show discussing things in an interesting way, and they get points for being interesting. And I've mentioned the show before because it comes up with a lot of facts that are quite interesting. So it's a great show for people who have a general curiosity about things. And while I've just spoken about compound interest, which I use really as a way to angle the title, let me talk about a compound fracture, because we know what compound interest is. And a compound fracture is when you break a bone in several places, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't. A compound, and the guests on the panel show were saying, well, a compound fracture is when you break the same bone in several places. No. And they said, well, a compound fracture is when you break lots of different bones? No. And I thought a compound fracture was breaking the same bone in different places. Compound fracture actually is when you break a bone and it comes through the skin, so it's sticking out. Because that has compounded the injury, because then you've got two injuries, two wounds. The broken bone itself and the wound of the bone coming through the skin. So it's compounded the problem. So you can see that that's where it comes from, compound. But as I say, I always thought a compound fracture was breaking the same bone in more than one place or multiple places. And so did the panelists on the show. And I imagine you might have thought that. So where does that knowledge come from? Why did I think that? And I've been trying to rack my brains to think, well, when was I taught that? Did I just assume it? Did I read it or see it somewhere? Well, obviously the answer to it's obviously yes to one of those, but I can't pin down which it is. But the important point, and it's a point I've mentioned before, about assumptions that we thought were true, that we always thought were true, that are just simply wrong. But the assumptions are things that we can base our current and future thoughts, words and actions. So our results, based on our thoughts, words and actions, can be based on assumptions that are completely wrong. We have an internal model. There's brain science going on in this bit. There's an internal model in our brain about what we think is right in the world. And then we use the input from our senses and we check the input against those internal models, because that's quicker than building a new model every time. Okay? So if we assume that that's true, and we assume that a lot of our assumptions and internal models are just wrong, then could it be, and I would suggest it is, that we can change those internal models once we find out that they're wrong, and then that changes our thoughts, our words and our actions and the results going forwards. That clearly seems to be true, doesn't it? The logic is sound. So if we can change our internal models once we find out that they're wrong, and then that changes our results going forwards, it's important to check our internal models, isn't it? We can check them sporadically off our own back, and if someone tells us something that is against what we have as an internal model, our assumption, it might be a good idea not just to dismiss it and be rude to the person who's making the suggestion, but actually to say, well, that's interesting. I had assumed otherwise. Let me check. Because it could be an internal model that's based on an opinion, which is one thing, and it could be based on fact, which could be more easily shown to just simply be wrong. Now, in the areas of content that I put out, my pillars of message, it applies all the way across the board. In the Transform Your Life Now area, when it comes to self-improvement, goal achievement and wealth creation, this idea of challenging our beliefs and maybe setting new beliefs is hugely important. It can be, well, transformational. And when it comes to the wealth creation bit, which is a combination of wealth of abundance and appreciating the wealth of abundance that we already have, combined with financial wealth. And in that angle, I talk about turning your passions into profit online. And it's definitely true then, because you might have thought, no, I can't turn my passion into profit online. You can. You might have thought, oh, making money online, that's all about scamming and pyramid schemes. It isn't. Can you see what I mean? So you might be missing the opportunity to turn your passion into profit online and the transformation that that might bring into your life. Maybe based on assumptions about it being a scam or not right for you, or you can't do it, too technical, too difficult, too expensive, when in fact those assumptions, those internal models are just wrong. And maybe you could test them to check, and you might find out that you will agree, oh, hang on, my internal model was wrong. I can do it. It is for me. It's not too difficult. It's not too technical. It's not too expensive, etc., etc., etc. So, let me know what you think about that. Let me know if you found that quite interesting. Did you think, as I did, that a compound fracture is breaking the same bone in multiple places? Because I certainly did. And then what do you think about this point of mine about internal models, assumptions, beliefs that we have, and how we lead our life based on some of them which are just wrong, and the advantages and the opportunity that is open to us going forward by testing and possibly changing those assumptions and beliefs. All right, if you like that message, do hit the like button. I would appreciate that. It helps me share my message via the Facebook algorithms. Wishing you, as ever, health and happiness, and I will speak to you again tomorrow.